The Forgotten Realms is soaked in the blood of ancient empires and shattered alliances. For thousands upon thousands of years, the continent of Faerûn has been a battleground, where gods, dragons, mortals, and monsters have clashed for power, vengeance, survival, and sometimes even petty pride. Some of these wars erupted from a single betrayal, others from the ambitions of titanic empires or divine retribution. But all of them left scars, deep ones, that continue to shape the world to this very day. The Crown Wars. These weren't just wars, they were epics of sorrow and ambition that defined the rise and fall of elven civilization. The Crown Wars were a series of 5 prolonged, devastating conflicts between the major elven nations, spanning nearly 3,000 years. It all began over 12,000 years ago when Arivandar, a powerful sun elf kingdom obsessed with domination, sought to seize control of Mieritar, a culturally rich realm of moon elves and dark elves. Initially, it was subtle: political influence, economic pressure, veiled threats. But eventually, it exploded into full-blown warfare. What followed was the systematic decimation of forests, magical plagues, and the casting down of entire cities. Mieritar was utterly destroyed in a magical cataclysm known as the Dark Disaster, a nightmarish storm of corrupted high magic unleashed by Arivandar that turned lush forests into barren wastelands and incinerated the capital in a matter of moments. It left behind only ash and haunting magical residue, forever scarring the land. The areas that suffered most were the heartlands of Mieritar itself, including the once glorious city of Keltormir, which stood as a bastion of natural harmony and arcane artistry before it was reduced to a haunted ruin. The High Forest, once a sanctuary of elven magic and life, was twisted into a scarred landscape riddled with lingering curses and unstable magical echoes. Even surrounding regions like Ilifarn and Erlan felt the tremors of the disaster, their own borders drawn into the ensuing chaos. The conflict only grew worse as alliances fractured and once noble kingdoms descended into war crimes. In the aftermath, many dark elves were driven underground. There, over centuries, they were twisted by the energies of the Underdark into the Drow, forever altered and exiled. The Crown Wars weren't just civil wars, they were cultural apocalypses. The War of Shadows. While most wars in Faerûn are battles of blade and spell, the War of Shadows was a conflict waged in silence, misdirection, and fear. Centered around the city of Shade Enclave and the Netherese Empire's return to the world stage, it was a war fought in twilight, both literally and figuratively. The Netherese returned to Faerûn from the Plane of Shadow, bringing with them ancient magic, flying cities, and an unquenchable thirst for dominion. Their arrival upset the balance of power across the continent, particularly in regions like Cormyr, Sembia, and the Dale Lands. Shadow magic surged as agents of Shade infiltrated governments, sabotaged armies, and turned former allies against each other. Open battles did erupt, such as the infamous siege of Ordelin, where the entire city was consumed by a shadow plague bomb. But much of the War of Shadows was fought in the minds and loyalties of Faerûnians. Heroes like Elminster and the Chosen of Maestra were drawn into the fray, battling not just the Netherese, but the corruption they left behind. The War of Shadows ended not with a single decisive battle, but through gradual attrition, persistent resistance, and the unraveling of Netheril's overreaching ambitions. It served as a stark reminder that not all wars are fought in daylight, and not every enemy shows their hand. Centuries earlier, the mighty theocratic empires of Mulhorand and Unther ruled the East, their rulers living avatars of their gods. This balance shattered when a magical portal, an Orc Gate, was opened on the frontier. From it surged an unstoppable tide of orcs, empowered and emboldened by their rising deities, with Grumsh at the helm. These wars were brutal. Divine champions clashed in the skies, while legions of mortal soldiers battled in the blood-soaked fields below. The death toll soared as cities were leveled and temples razed. Grumsh himself killed the god Re, one of the Mulhorandi pantheon's most powerful beings. That moment changed the face of divine warfare forever. The Orkgate Wars not only weakened Mulhorand and Unther irreparably, but also seeded a deep-rooted fear and prejudice against orcs that persists in the realms to this very day. The Rage of Dragons. Dragons are already terrifying. Now imagine every dragon in Faerûn suddenly going insane with bloodlust. That's what the Rage of Dragons was, a recurring magical madness that overtook all dragonkind every few centuries. But the last rage? That was engineered by the cult of the dragon, and it was catastrophic. Using an ancient artifact called the Drakhorn, the cult of the dragon prolonged the rage, directing it like a weapon against the civilized world. Their motive was clear. By plunging the world into chaos, they could weaken the existing powers and pave the way for their vision of draconic dominion, led by undead dracoliches under their control. They saw the rage as a once-in-an-era opportunity to unleash devastation and then rise from the ashes as puppet masters of a new world order. The cult's tactics were ruthless and cunning. Rather than letting dragons rampage randomly, they strategically deployed them to strike high-value targets: fortified cities, trade centers, magical strongholds. Using a network of cult agents and corrupted worms, they coordinated assaults with military precision. Entire cities were reduced to ash. Armies were torn apart by aerial strikes from dragons driven mad by ancient magic. The Sword Coast, normally a bustling hub of trade and diplomacy, became a war-torn wasteland. It forced unlikely alliances between rival kingdoms, adventuring parties, and even some good-aligned dragons. The end of the Rage marked the beginning of new diplomatic pacts and a surge in anti-draconic magical research. But it also reminded everyone that in Faerûn, even the skies can betray you. The Spellplague. When Mystra died during the Time of Troubles, slain by the God Helm while attempting to re-enter the heavens without Ao's permission, magic trembled across Faerûn. Her death fractured the weave, causing a brief period of arcane instability. But when she died again centuries later, this time assassinated by Cyric with the help of Shar as part of a divine conspiracy, the effects were far more catastrophic. With the weave entirely undone, magic spiraled into chaos. The result was the Spellplague, a worldwide catastrophe that shattered not just spells and cities, but the rules of existence itself. Magic no longer obeyed the laws of nature. Planes shifted, geography warped, and entire civilizations were swallowed by magical ruin. The Spellplague caused magical mutations, disintegrated entire regions, and rearranged geography overnight. Hal Ruaa, the floating empire of spellcasters, was annihilated. Netherese seized the chaos to bring back its long-dead empire, weaponizing their floating cities and mythalars to conquer swathes of territory. Meanwhile, Aber, a sister world to Toril, briefly merged with Faerûn, unleashing dragons, elementals, and other planar horrors upon an already fractured world. There wasn't a single front. Every kingdom fought its own war against reality. Magic itself couldn't be trusted. Healers accidentally poisoned, teleporters exploded, and wizards turned into monsters. The Spellplague permanently altered the magical and political landscape of the realms. Entire generations grew up never knowing a stable world. The War of the Silver Marches. Also known as the Sundering War, this campaign of destruction was the largest coordinated assault by orcs in centuries. Led by the cunning and ruthless warlord Hartusk, orcs, giants, ogres, and goblinoid armies united under a single banner and marched westward into the Silver Marches, one of Faerûn's last bastions of peace. Their shared motive was rooted in long-standing resentment and territorial displacement, combined with a rare moment of unity under Hartusk's charismatic and brutal leadership. He promised conquest, vengeance, and the return of ancestral lands to those who followed him. This alliance of traditionally fractious groups was cemented by a vision of dominance over the surface world, and a shared hatred of the dwarves, elves, and humans who had pushed them into the fringes of the realms. What made this war different was the strategy. Hartusk didn't just throw warriors at city walls. He used tactics, siege engines, magic, and psychological warfare. Cities like Sundabar and Nezem didn't just fall, they were obliterated. The legendary city of Silvery Moon was besieged, barely holding out thanks to its mythal defenses. The dwarves of Mithril Hall, the Harpers, and famed adventurers like Bruenor Battlehammer were all drawn into the conflict. When the dust settled, the Silver Marches alliance was broken. What had once been a symbol of unity became a warning of how quickly trust and cooperation could collapse under pressure. The dwarves emerged, hardened, but isolated, having paid a steep price for their victories. The Second Sundering. Think of it as the cosmic cleanup after the Spellplague's wild party. The Second Sundering wasn't just a war, it was a total reset of Faerûn's metaphysical foundations. Gods that had disappeared returned. Others were banished. The worlds of Aber and Toril were separated again, and entire continents shifted back into their rightful places. Conflicts flared across the world as mortals and gods alike scrambled to defend their interests in this new age. Empires rose, fell, and fractured under the pressure of divine upheaval and shifting magic. Notably, the Empire of Netherese collapsed once more, consumed by its own ambition and magical instability. In contrast, kingdoms like Cormyr stabilized their rule through strong leadership and divine guidance, while Chult, after enduring its own share of divine chaos, re-emerged as a more unified and vital realm. Theocratic powers like Mulhorand, long dormant, experienced a resurgence as their deities returned to the mortal plane. Amid this backdrop of transformation, the chosen of the gods, mortals imbued with divine essence, battled across the realms in epic duels, secret missions, and continent-shaping events. Some ascended to godhood themselves, including the sage-turned-demigod Faerûn, the ambitious Cyric who claimed portfolios through both guile and murder, and the mortal adventurer Kalimvor, who became the new god of death. In Cormyr, in Toy, in Chult and beyond, war burned as the new order took shape, redrawing the spiritual and political maps of Faerûn. When it was over, the world was recognizable again, but barely. The Sundering re-established the weave and stabilized magic, but the political and cultural fallout continues to ripple outward. It wasn't a single war, but a mosaic of divine and mortal conflicts that shaped the modern Forgotten Realms. Conclusion. From the ancient betrayals of the elves to the thunderous fall of empires, from the madness of dragons to the wrath of the gods themselves, Faerûn is a land where war is the true constant. Peace is the pause between chapters, and every conflict, no matter how forgotten by time, has left its mark. So whether you walk with sword, spell, or shadow, beware. In the Forgotten Realms, war never dies. It simply waits for the next verse in the Song of Battle. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore, Be sure to smash that like button like a barbarian on a rampage. And if you want to keep uncovering the mysteries of the realms, don't forget to roll for subscription and hit the bell so you never miss a quest. Until next time, may your rolls be high and your loot be legendary.